what we're talking about today is growing your database, right? This is all about building your database. And guys, you're going to just hear us say this again and again and again until you're tired of hearing it. Your database is your business. Gary Keller says this all the time. Whoever has the strongest, healthiest, most vibrant database of relationships is the one who wins the game. That's just the way it goes. So I want to take a little bit of time. We're going to talk a little bit about database management today. But before I do, I just want to get a quick sense of, in your perspective, what are we talking about in terms of a database? What is a database in the first place? Let's just get a couple definitions out on the board here. So I'd love for some folks to unmute themselves. And let's just talk database for a minute. What exactly is it? Anybody can jump in on that. And I would encourage someone to jump in on that. If you're not in a place where you can talk easily, then put it in chat.
Can you hear me?
I can.
I believe it's who you know and people that you would call, or people that you're inner circle.
Okay. Well, part of your database is your inner circle. Sometimes we refer to that inner circle, Eric, as the sphere of influence. Mm-hmm. And yet there should be probably people that are in your database who you maybe don't have that strong a relationship with yet, mm-hmm. right? Not everybody in your database do you have influence over, right? Right. So that's part of the database. What else? Give me some more definitions of database, guys. A database is a list or record of connected information. I see that from Ingrid in the chat. Terrific. It's that too. What else?
Business tracking.
Business tracking. Kristen, I love where I think you're going. Tell me unpack that a little bit more.
Just tracking and measuring, leads and prospects.
Okay.
And, I do mine with tracking, through the transaction too, dates. Okay.
So your database gives you the opportunity to keep track of what's going on in the relationship inside the transaction, right? And in Command, that part of the database that does that is the opportunity section, right? Where you can kind of track as you're moving through. Here's what I want you to think, guys. I want you to think about your database in a big, broad sense. It's more than a tool. It's more than a piece of computer software that keeps track of things. It's more than a bucket of information. A database at its finest it's a community, really. It's a community of people. And some of the people you know, and some of the people you might not even know yet. But you know who they are, you know where they are. You know that they might be good candidates to do business with you, either because maybe they live in the community where you want to focus your business. Maybe you know who they are because their names are in a directory of some list that you have. And maybe, when I first got started, my daughter, I think, was in 4th grade when I started in real estate. And I kind of took the directory of all the kids, all the 4th grade classes in town and all the parents who were in there. I didn't know them all, but I wanted to because they lived in the town and they were going to be in the circles that I was going to travel in. So your database is a community of people that have needs, that have wants, that have dreams, some of who you know, some of who you don't know. And your goal in terms of nurturing and building your database is to kind of position yourself inside this community in a way that you get known, that you get seen, that you are trusted, that people begin to think of you when they think of a real estate need. And that requires some work, right? That requires some work. So the laws of database management, there's 4 rules that we're going to talk about today. Number 1 is you have to build it. What is it? Field of Dreams? Was that the movie where the baseball field out in the cornfield, they said, if you build it, they will come. Well, just building your database doesn't necessarily mean that the business is going to come. It's what do you do with it? Right? So, but first you've got to build it. You have to have something that you're going to use. And for us guys, I would encourage you to use Command, not because I'm trying to be a homer for Keller Williams stuff. If you have a different system that you would prefer to use, then go ahead and use it. It's just the things that you want to make sure that your database tool can do for you is not only keep track of the names and the addresses and the phone numbers, but automate in some ways so that you can automate some of the communication that goes out to the people in there. And as Kristen was saying, that you allow yourself to track the transaction as you move from phase to phase to phase. And Command does that really well. The thing that Command does also is it layers in some artificial intelligence. And so your database, if you're using Command, will not only do the things we just described, but it will also kind of watch what's happening with your clients and with you. And what does that look like? Well, if they're on your app, right? If they're on your app, it will start to be able to notice when they're going and looking at property, what kinds of property do they seem to be most interested in? It'll start to take a look and say, you know what? Hal seems to be looking at homes that have hardwood floors more than he looks at homes with carpeting. And the artificial intelligence will start to kind of shape that experience and then communicate back to you and say, hey, you know what, Kristen, kind of noticing Hal's looking at more homes with hardwood floors than carpet. You may want to factor that into your search. The artificial intelligence command is really cool, right? And it will help you to build a better relationship and a better consumer experience. Step number one in the rules, you've got to build it, and then you've got to feed it daily. You've got to constantly be adding to it, right? We're going to unpack each one of these. Number three, you've got to communicate with your database in a systematic way. That is probably the place where most agents struggle, where most business people struggle. Is here's what happens. Human beings have a habit of paying attention to the thing that seems the most urgent in the moment, right? We do that. It's part of our survival mechanism. If something looks like it's an emergency, it gets our attention. And many, many times, our lives always have these little brush fires popping up here, popping up there. I think about it as the boardwalk game sometimes. If you ever go to the boardwalk in that game Whack-A-Mole, you ever see that Whack-A-Mole game? Little guy pops his head up, you whack him with the hammer. He pops his head up over here, you whack him with the hammer. What we do is we tend to pay attention to the things that's the most urgent. And what we lose is systematically staying in touch with everyone. And as a result, some of those relationships begin to wither and atrophy. So we're going to talk about how to manage that differently. And then finally, rule number 4 of database management, build it, feed it, communicate with it systematically. You've got to service the opportunities that it generates. And guys, I'm here to tell you, and I'm going to tell you straight up, it will generate opportunities for you when you work your database properly. When you systematically work your database the way that I'm going to teach you how to do it, your database will generate leads for you in a predictable fashion. And we know what those conversion rates are, and I'm going to talk about those a little bit later this morning. But let me ask you a question. What would it be like if you could trust in real estate that simply based on the number of people you had in your database, the way that you communicated with the people in your database systematically, that you could predict the number of closings that you would have in a year? Would that make your life less stressful? Anybody? Anybody? Would that predictability make your life less stressful? I'm hoping that the answer is yes. You guys are real quiet on a Monday morning.
No.
I'm hoping that the answer is yes. But here's the thing, it can do that. It will generate leads in a predictable fashion if you work it in the right way. So let's kind of talk about it first. First thing you got to do is you got to build it. And, I looked at this sort of cloverleaf, this highway cloverleaf, and it's pretty complicated. There's a lot of turns. There's a lot of jug handles and all that sort of stuff when you look at it from above. One of the things that's really interesting is when they're laying out highway construction, typically what they're doing is they're doing it in anticipation of the traffic. They're doing it based on demographics. They're doing it in terms of where people seem to be moving to and how populations are starting to build out, anticipating more vehicle traffic. And they build the highways in the best of all worlds. They build the highways in advance to accommodate the traffic that's coming. When they don't anticipate well, or when things grow faster than is expected, then what has to happen is they've got to build new roads and wider roads while people are driving on them. Welcome to a lot of New Jersey driving, right? It's always backed up. There's always road work. But when it's done well, you build it in advance. And so what I want you to do is, even though you're in launch, this is new agent launch, maybe you don't have tons and tons and tons of business yet. You still need to build out your database so that the structure is there so that when that business comes, it's ready for you, right? So rule number one is build it. And so you're going to have to learn some things about construction. If you were going to build a road, you'd have to learn some things about engineering. You'd have to learn some things about geology. You'd have to learn a lot of different stuff about paving roads. And you're going to have to learn that. In Command, where are you going to go? Well, there's a couple places that I'm going to point you to become knowledgeable, to learn how to use this tool. Well, number one, go to the Bergen County Partners YouTube channel, right? And if you go there, and if you look at this playlist right here, you're going to see that we're going to have a playlist built out for you that is on Command, right? Chris Gareffa, Elise Dulani, Reese, and all the different people that teach Command have recorded a lot of their sessions, and they've put them into a playlist. So you can just kind of go and look at those. Now, I also would encourage you to subscribe to the YouTube channel, because as new content comes on, you'll get notified about it. You won't miss anything. Another playlist that you're going to find there is a playlist for what we call the 66-Day Challenge. Is there anyone who's familiar with Marty Miller and the 66-Day Challenge? Just put in the chat, yes, I am, or no, I'm not. I just would like to get a sense of how many people are familiar with that tool and familiar with Marty. I see that a couple people are and some are not. Juan is on day number 20. A lot of people know. So let me tell you a little bit about who Marty is. He is a guy out of Houston, Texas. He's a Keller Williams agent. He runs a team out of Houston. He's also a technology coach for Keller Williams. I think he might be the regional technology coach for his Keller Williams region there. But what he's done is he's kind of taken Command and he's broken it down into bite-sized chunks to teach it. And it's interesting, he chose 66 days as the number of sessions because the book that Gary Keller and Jay Papasan wrote a number of years ago called The One Thing, the book about performance, sort of said, you know, the research seems to indicate that it takes about 66 days of consistency to kind of develop a new habit. And certain habits can be developed faster, certain habits take longer, but the sweet spot sort of is around 66 days. So what Marty did is he said, let's get into the habit of learning how to use Command. I'm going to take 66 small videos that teach you not everything from beginning to end. One of the challenges that sometimes happens when you go to the classes that we teach is that they might be an hour long and they might cover 4 or 5 different things. And I don't know about you, but I know myself. I know I have ADD. Even though I'm not medicated, I've managed it fairly well. I have a hard time sometimes getting through an hour-long class. And so what Marty does is he chunks it down, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, one task at a time. And I think that's a great way to learn Command. Juan, you're on day 20. Would you be willing to unmute and share a little bit about what your experience has been learning Command this way?
Yeah, sure. Sometimes, I mean, I do maybe like 3 a day or 2 a day, so I don't stick to the one day, but it's showing me, because Command is a little bit overwhelming,
yeah,
if you don't know it, but he breaks it down, and for me also, I have attention that I lose after an hour. You know, it's good because they're short. The longest, I think they're like 15, 20 minutes. You can focus. But when they're an hour long class after a long day, you kind of lose focus, but it's helped a lot to understand Command.
Yeah, I'm glad you kind of felt the same way, Juan. I felt for myself, I sometimes would do 3 or 4 a day because they were short enough, but it's just a quick and easy way. And then here's the thing, if there's a particular thing that you're trying to learn how to do, you just go to that particular module. You don't have to kind of go through an hour-long class and figure out when are we going to get to it. So in the playlists here, one of the playlists that we've put on our Bergen Partners channel is a link to the YouTube group of videos called the 66-Day Challenge, right? So lots of different places that you can learn how to use Command, right? Another one that I'm a big fan of, anybody familiar with a guy named Nick Baldwin? This is Facebook now. We're going to go to Facebook, and he runs a group called Command Your Conversion. He also runs another group on Facebook called Lab Code Agents. Is anybody familiar with any of those Facebook groups? I'd love for somebody just to put in chat. or unmute.
I just joined like 2 days ago.
Okay, good. Here's the thing I'm going to tell you. Facebook can be, you know what Facebook can be. I don't need to tell you about Facebook. There's all kinds of stuff. Some of it's useful, some of it not so much. Lab Coat Agents, interestingly, is a group that Nick started a number of years ago. And at that time, Nick was an agent that worked for me. He's a Jersey guy. He worked for me in Montclair when I was the team leader there a number of years ago. And it's funny, he came to me one time and he said, I'm going to start this Facebook group and it's going to be sort of the science of real estate. And you have this image of scientists in a lab coat, so we're going to call it Lab Coat Agents. And would you join my group? And I'm like, yeah, Nick, whatever. And so I joined his group. Well, today, Lab Coat Agents, I think, is somewhere around 120,000 members. It is the largest real estate community on the internet. And that is a good place sometimes to just kind of poke around and see what people are talking about. Understand when you have 120,000 people, there's an awful lot of people that have really, really strong opinions of how you should do your real estate practice who don't have a flipping clue what they're talking about. It's one of the challenges of learning in a Facebook environment from each other. Crowdsourced learning is good if the crowd knows what they're talking about. But Nick then went out and he also started this other group called Command Your Conversion. And what it is, it's focused exclusively on using command. And so I would want you to join the Command Your Conversion group. Just go to Facebook, type Command Your Conversion into the search bar, ask to join. Nick and the administrators will let you in. And every single day, there's fresh content on how to use command to grow your business. It's a really great resource, and I'm really proud of Nick in a lot of ways. You know, he's done a lot to give back to the real estate community through what he's doing on Facebook. So that's another group that I'd encourage you to do. Go join our YouTube channel. Go join Command Your Conversion. Watch the videos that are on our channel. Watch Marty Miller's videos on the 66-day challenge. Go to Command Your Conversion. You will learn how to do this, right? First thing, number one, build your database. You got to learn the tools. Now, some structural decisions you've got to make as you're building out your highway, right? For starters, one of the decisions you're going to have to make is who goes in your database and who would you probably not put in your database. How are you going to think that through? I'd love to just get some conversation started around that. How are you going to approach? Does everybody go in? Do you have a criteria of who goes in and how do you make that decision? What are you guys thinking? Parole, so you can join those groups. Absolutely. Yes, you can. How are you going to think about who goes in and who doesn't? Somebody unmute. Help me out here.
Your Met group.
Okay. People that you've met would go in there. Okay. Any other thoughts about who would go in your database, your real estate database, and who wouldn't?
Sphere.
Go ahead, Kristen. What was that?
Your other than Sphere.
Your sphere, for sure. Yeah. Look, here's the thing. This is going to be this community of people that conceivably you're going to do business with. And so a couple of ways that I would think about it myself is if there would be any possibility for me to do real estate business with you, you should probably be in it, right? Even if we haven't met, remember we talked about sometimes you can put people in your database and start to communicate with them as a way of initiating a relationship. Would you put somebody in that database who lived outside of New Jersey where you're not licensed to do real estate? Would you put that person in your database? What do you think?
Sure.
Okay, how come?
Referrals.
Outstanding, very smart. I like the way you're thinking. Yeah, for sure. You know, and one of the things that is the biggest missed opportunity is when you build the community of people inside your database and you position yourself as the real estate expert, the person that they go to when they've got a question. Many, many times, the person who's selling their house might be out of state and the house they're going to buy might be out of state. But if they can come to you for help in terms of finding a great agent to list their home in one place and to find a great buyer's agent to buy a home in another place, and if you can facilitate those introductions, you can earn a referral fee on each side of those transactions. So a lot of times people come to me and say, everybody that I know lives somewhere else. That doesn't necessarily mean they shouldn't be in your database, right? Now, it does mean we've got to add more people. And we're going to talk about feeding your database in a minute. We got to add more people that are closer to where you're going to do business for sure. For me, it was, you're in my database until one of two things happens. Either A, I see a death certificate, and B, and I'm teasing, right? But I'm not getting you out of my database unless you ask. If you ask to be taken out of the database, then I'm going to honor that. But one of the things that happens is sometimes what happens is in our communication, especially in our automated communication, if people feel that it's just too much, it's just coming too frequently, sometimes they will unsubscribe. That doesn't necessarily mean they want to come out of your database. It might simply mean that they just want to tone it down. They don't want to hear from you 3 times a month, maybe once a month, maybe once every other month, maybe once a quarter. Whatever you need to do to kind of modify how you could communicate with them so that they would still be willing to have you around is better than taking them out of the database entirely, right? You've got to think about how you're going to organize your database. Now, we have a couple of structural rules with Command, and one of them is the language that we use. We refer to some people as leads and some people as contacts. Anybody know the difference between a lead and a contact as it relates to Command and the language that we use here? Who can unpack that a little bit? Anybody? Well, here's how it goes.
Contacts is 2 ways.
Yeah,
Lead only?
contacts is 2 ways. You're spot on. Congratulations. That's it. A lead is, I kind of know where you are. I know who you are. I know where you are. I have a way to reach you. But we're not engaged in a 2-way dialogue yet. So you're a lead, a relationship lead, if you will. And maybe I've met you, and maybe I haven't met you. Think about it this way. Somebody, maybe Eric, you're hosting your open house, and maybe somebody comes to your open house and they sign in. You met them. They're real. But in your follow-up, they just don't seem to be calling you back. They don't seem to be returning your texts or returning your emails. They still, for all intents and purposes, are a lead, even though you've met them, because you're not engaged in a conversation. But when you do have 2-way dialogue going back and forth, we're going to call those people contacts, that you've got a relationship with them. And some of those relationships are strong. We would call those your sphere of influence. Some of those relationships are not as strong. We'll just call that your contact list. And then inside the whole group is going to be some people that actually raise their hand and say, hey, I have an opportunity for you to represent me in the purchase or the sale or the investment or the rental of real property. In the language of Command, we would call that an opportunity. Your leads or your contacts could be opportunities. They're all different levels within your database, right? Now, the first filter is, are you a lead or are you a contact? The second filter is a kind of a grouping filter. To manage your database as it grows, we've got to have a way to organize it in a way where we can kind of put people together in buckets that make sense. We call those tags. And sometimes you're going to put a tag in terms of people that I met the same way. I might tag open house guests with a specific open house tag. I might tag people that responded to a Facebook ad that I did with a Facebook ad tag. You get to create the tags, or basically the labels that you're going to sort of put these folks into these organized little buckets. Maybe you're going to put a group together of people that are buyers. Maybe you're going to put a group together of people that are investors or renters or whatever those are. You might even start to put a tag and group people together that have similar interests. Now, why would I do that? Well, the goal of really creating great communication within your database is being able to communicate about things that are important to them. And so, for example, if I had a group of people that were younger with younger families, and one of the things that was really important to them was sort of parenting and family events and things like that, I may create a tag to group all of those people together. And then if I've got another group of folks who are maybe seniors and they don't have kids at home, but they have concerns about, how do they enjoy their time during their retirement? What kinds of activities? I might tag those folks together as well. And so in my communication that I send out in a structured way, which we're going to talk about in a minute, I might send to the family group information about things like the new soccer league in town and how they're going to handle the upcoming season registration with COVID. That would be relevant to them, but not to the seniors. To the seniors, I may send something out there that talks about, who knows, something that might be used, maybe a museum art opening or something like that nearby, an activity that they could get involved in, which may be more relevant to them, but not to the younger families. You get to decide, right, how you choose to group folks together, but grouping people together with similar interests allows your communication to be that much more relevant to them. And ultimately, it's going to create a stronger relationship for you. So just as we talked about building out the highway system before you have traffic, to some extent, you're going to want to start to think about, based on the vision of your business and how you think you're going to do it, what tags make sense in the beginning, buyers, sellers, perhaps people that are looking for homes to purchase in a specific town. If I had a lot of folks, if I was focusing on Paramus as one of the key towns I was doing my business on, anybody that was interested in buying a home in Paramus, I would probably tag. Because then when I've got new listings for Paramus, I'm going to make sure that they know about it. But somebody who's interested in another town, I may not send them that communication. Think about the tags that make sense for you. Start to build those out. And what you know is then as your business begins to grow, you'll start to see more tags that make sense, add those as well. But the structural decisions is who goes in, are you a lead, are you a contact? How am I going to organize through tagging to create you in little buckets that make sense so that I can filter and communicate in a more productive way? Does that make sense? Hope so.
Yes.
Question, why use a database? Well, there's one main reason. There's a couple reasons, right? But one of the biggest reasons to use a database, beyond just the fact that it helps you keep track of things, right? And I know in the beginning, when I started in real estate in 2003, I didn't have a computerized database. There were some of them out there, but my company didn't provide one. And they were expensive to go buy, privately. And so my system was, notebooks and Excel spreadsheets. And I had some names on whatever scrap of paper that I could find. When I met somebody, names written on the back of a McDonald's cheeseburger wrapper sitting in the back seat of my car. That's not a great database. One of the things a database does, it gives you organization. The second thing is this. It allows you to focus on business today and tomorrow. What we tend to do without an automated database is we play whack-a-mole. We pay attention to the people that need us now, and we try to serve their needs and help them in any way we can. But the people that don't need us for a while, we lose track of them, right? And that's tomorrow's business. Here's what the research tells us, guys. The research tells us that about 6% of the population will be involved in a real estate transaction every year. About 6%. The question is, will they do it with you? So if you look at your database, guys, you might have 100 names in your database. Out of the 100 names, probably 6 of them are going to need an agent this year. 94 of them are not. And if they're only focusing on the 6 and not cultivating the relationship with the people who will need us later, they won't be in our lives when the time comes for them to use us. So rule number 1, build it. Learn the tools, learn how to manage it, learn how to tag, learn how to add people in. Number 2, you got to feed it every day. Mama bird has got to feed baby bird every day. You are mama bird of your database, and you've got to add to it every single day, right? And so, you start thinking about, okay, what am I going to put in my database, right? We started to think about who goes in, who doesn't go in. It's just like your body. The quality of the food that you put into your body largely dictates the quality of how your health is. And so you're going to want to put in healthy leads and healthy contacts. What do they look like? Well, contacts are probably more nutritious in your body, in your database body, than leads are. Because what we know is people that you have two-way relationship with, it's easier to build that community with. And so putting yourself into a relationship, putting yourself into a prospecting activity where you can make a connection one-on-one, start to build some rapport, makes it easier for you to put that person in your database as a contact. A lot of times what people will do is they'll just buy a list of names, which is leads. They'll just upload 500 names and start dripping on them. It's okay, but it's not as useful as the contacts. So think about where do I have relationships? You look at the list here: former schoolmates, people that you worked with, members of other organizations that you belong to, right? People that fit your target demographic, past customers, local business owners, other agents for referrals. There's lots and lots of different people that you want to get into your database. Be purposeful about who you're looking to put in. The same way that hopefully you're being purposeful about what you put into your body. If you want to have good health, be purposeful about going out and getting more relationships that you've already got and get them in there, right? And look, a lot of us have people that we lost track of over time, right? I went to college and to graduate school and to postgraduate school, all here in the tri-state area, New Jersey and New York. And I never went away to college or school. And so a lot of people that I know are local, right? But what I know is, like, I graduated college in 1984, 85, rather. And so a lot of those people I lost track with. A lot of you guys weren't even born yet, but that's my problem. The thing is, you got to go back and see, can you reconnect? Can you reconnect? How would you do it? Right. What I would caution you about is not going back and reconnecting with people that you went to school with and saying, hey, Bob, it's Hal. I just wanted to reach back out to let you know that I'm involved in real estate now. And I just want to let you know that if there's anything I can ever do to help you buy, sell, or invest, I'm here for you. And Bob is like, dude, I haven't heard from you since 1985. What the hell are you calling me for today? You don't want to be self-serving that way. But what I would say is, if you want to kind of just get back into a relationship with people because you want them back into your life, then it pays to go out and find them, right? And don't go out there and solicit them right away. Just go back and reach out and find them again and start to reconnect. And there's a million ways to do that, right? How would you do that? How would you go back and find a high school classmate that maybe you lost track of? How would you do that research? Anybody have a thought around that? There's a bunch of tools out there.
Maybe Facebook now.
I think, you know what, Joseph, I think Facebook or social is the easiest way to do it. You go back in, and half the time, these groups have their own groups. Your high school class probably has a Facebook group. Or you find somebody that maybe you did stay in touch with, or somebody that you remember that you had a close relationship with, and go see if they're there and send them a message and just reach back out and start to, reconnect. I think there's lots of different ways to go back into it, right? But start to put people into your database. In Ignite, we ask you to try to think about what would it take to put 10 people a day, 10 new people a day into your database. And guys, that's not as easy as it sounds. Because in the very beginning, when no one's in your database and lots of folks, you just put them in, you put them in. But the average person, the circle, the tribes that we travel in, sociologists tell us that for most of us, it's about 150 people deep. That's not to say we don't know more people, but once we get outside of a group of about 150, those relationships tend to be pretty loose, pretty loose. And so how long does it take you to put 150 people in command? You could bang that out in a week. Once you're done with that, what are you going to do next, right? Then you got to go out and prospect and market and attract new ones, right? So the first thing you do is you build it, learn how to build the tools, learn how you're going to organize it. When you put people in, what tags will you put them in, right? How would you organize them? That is something you want to do right away, rather than have 1,000 people in your database and come back and try to retag them one at a time. Just go in and do it in as you put them in. A hack on that, if you want to do it this way, sometimes people use Facebook for the birthday feature. The birthday feature is kind of fun. Every day you see how many people have a birthday. And some of them, if you're like me, some of them super well, and you're going to wish them happy birthday. And some of them well enough that you're not just going to put it on their Facebook wall, but you're actually going to pick up the phone and call them because they're really close friends. And some people, you don't have an idea who the hell they are. One of the things that people will sometimes do is take a year and use the Facebook birthday triggers to think about, how well do I know this person? They're already friends on Facebook, so conceivably they're in my world. If I put them into my command account, would I consider them a contact? Would I consider them a lead? If I put them into my command account, how would I tag them? Are they people that I used to work with at a job? Are they people that I went to school with? Are they people that lived in the neighborhood where I used to live? However way you're going to think about that Facebook relationship. But the birthday reminder gives you an opportunity, if you use that as a time to just spend a year and cycle through and make those decisions. At the end of the year, your database is going to be really, really well organized, right? Something to think about. All right, let's move along. What goes into your database? There's 3 levels. There's the essential, the effective, and the exceptional. And here's what's essential: name, contact information, what's your relationship with them? Are they a past customer? And at-will communication. That's essential, meaning that they're willing to hear from you. They're not going to unsubscribe or call the police every time you send them an email. That's at-will communication. That's not always two-way communication. That's not permission-based communication. It's just, hey, I'm not gonna unsubscribe if you send me stuff. That's the essential, right? Now, effective is two-way communication where people have given you permission to say, you know what, I'm willing to hear from you again. That's way better, right? That's way better. Not as many people are going to give you permission, but those that do are willing to hear from you. It's way better to build your database around people that want to hear from you. And what else goes in? Collect personal information, insights, preferences, things that matter to them. You're going to segment the group based on all these different things here before. Purposeful and consistent communication is effective. We're going to talk about smart plans in a second. The very exceptional communication is this: communication that's to some extent somewhat automated. You will never be able to, nor should you try to completely automate a relationship. But as much as you can to have the system send things out and only have you focus on the personal direct communication, the better it is, right? So an exceptional database is automated. It's custom communication built around specific triggers. What do we mean by triggers? Let's go back to Facebook birthdays for a second. That's a trigger. If you know the person's birthday, and if you watch your Facebook feed for a year, you're going to find everybody's birthday. If you put their birthday into the file in command, then you can set a trigger that says 5 days prior, start to get ready to send them a card or whatever you're going to do to recognize their birthday. That's the kind of triggering that makes a database truly exceptional. And then systematically communicate with people, purposefully, with a plan, with intention. Systematically, we do that through command. We do that through what we call smart plans, where we can kind of build out, what does this look like over time? I might have a smart plan that lasts for 3 months. In week number 1, I'm going to send you a text. In week number 2, I'm going to give you an email. In week number 3, I'm going to pick up the phone and call you. In week number 4, I'm going to do something different. But it is sketched out step by step by step. That allows you to create the automation. Now, we've built out for you in command some generic smart plans, right? Some of those are once a month based. We call those neighborhood nurtures, where once a month, we're just going to send information that's relevant to people based on the neighborhood that they live in or they have chosen to identify with. We have a smart plan that might do the same thing 2 times a month. We have a smart plan that's built out to be a quarterly telephone call, which just triggers you to say, hey, you know what? Today is the day that you're supposed to give Hal a call, right? But that smart plans is how we do it purposefully. And there's a different frequency for how often we're going to communicate with you based on whether you're a lead, one-way communication, or a contact, two-way communication. And here's what it is. With the leads, we're going to communicate with you 19 times a year. We call it the 19 touch plan. And so you say, okay, how would I cobble together a bunch of different smart plans so that I would reach out to somebody 19 times a year? Well, let's look. The first 12 touches might be these. Maybe it's a monthly email or a monthly newsletter. Again, keep in mind, these are people that are not responding back. but we're still creating that top of the mind awareness. 12 touches every month, a newsletter or some kind of a market report, 4 times a year, a telephone call. And people say, why would I call somebody who's not calling me back? Because they need to hear that you're alive and that you're out there. And so would I leave a message? They're not picking up the phone. Yeah, leave a message. Leave a message. You know, if you don't leave a message, they're not going to call you back. I can promise you, look, how many times do you get a call on your phone that if you don't recognize the phone number, you're not picking it up anyway? And so leave a message. And the message is simply, hey, you know what? It's Hal just reaching out to let you know what's going on in the market right now. Inventory is low. Things are moving briskly. If you have any kind of real estate related needs, I'm here. Just thought I'd share that with you. And then 3 months later, you leave another message, right? So 4 times a year might be those kinds of touches. A couple times a year, you might send them a promotional thing. Maybe you got a magnet with your picture on it. Maybe you've got some other kind of a pinchy clip for, potato chip bags that's branded to you. You send a couple of those a year. Maybe once a year, you invite them to an event. You know what? I'm doing a coat drive in October, and I'm going to collect coats for New Jersey Shares, which is a great nonprofit organization. As you're switching out your wardrobe this year, if you have any coats that you want to donate, just send me an email. I'll be happy to come and pick it up. Right? You just kind of mix it up 19 times a year. What we've learned is that that's about the frequency it takes for people to begin to feel comfortable enough with you that they would really reach back out and become a contact. And once you're a contact, then we're going to amp it up. Now we're talking 36 times a year, 3 times a month. How am I going to do that? Well, maybe 26 touches or bi-weekly. Every other week, we send them some updated market information. Maybe 1 week is information related to what's going on in the housing market, what's new and available for sale or recently sold in the town that they live in. Maybe 2 weeks later, we're going to send them some information that's just relevant to their interest group, right? Maybe the parents get a different email. Maybe the downsizers get a different email, or the seniors get a different email. But we add 4 telephone calls, or we send them the same kind of marketing things a couple times a year, or invite them to events. The point is, just like building out your highway system, how are we going to build out our touch campaigns so that I can put together the frequency of 19 times a year for the leads, 36 times a year for the contacts. And when we do it that way, what begins to happen is that your conversion rates, become predictable, right? So spend some time, customize your smart plans, go into the KW YouTube channel, go into Marty Miller's section on smart plans in the 66-day challenge, play with it. If you build a smart plan and you don't like it is, then delete it and build another one. You're not going to break command, right? But the thing you got to think about is, how do you make yourself unique? How do you provide information and value that they're not getting from other people? That's what makes you truly valuable to people. What do the clients want or need that they're not getting in the marketplace? That's your opportunity to kind of think about how you're going to provide that. Now, rule number 4, you got to serve the business that it generates. And it will generate business. I'm telling you, it's going to generate business for you consistently. We know what the conversion rates are. For the 36 touch, that group of contacts, what we know is that converts at about 10 to 1 if you're doing it well. If you're sending relevant information and you're staying that engaged, for every 10 people that are in your database hearing from you at that level, you should anticipate 1 transaction a year. Either they're going to buy a house, or they're going to refer you to someone who's going to buy a house because they believe in you because you've got a strong relationship, right? So service the business that it generates. And how do we do that? We do that in the opportunities section. I think, Kristen, you might have talked about this earlier, right? When they've raised their hand and say, here's an opportunity, we're going to put them in a different part of our database and we're going to track that opportunity. At first, we're just going to cultivate it because maybe that opportunity is not immediate. Maybe it's a little bit down the line. I'm going to sell my house after my daughter graduates high school. Today is the 14th of September. She ain't graduating until June. This is one I'm going to nurture for a while, right? Not yet that we're going to meet, but that at some point when we get ready for an appointment, we're going to move them to the appointment part of our database. And based on that appointment, when we take that listing, we're going to move them to the active part of our database. And then once we're marketing their home, when we get it under contract, we're going to move it to the under contract part of our database. And when it closes, we're going to move them to the closed part of our database. And once it closes, we're going to put them right back into a touch campaign and begin that nurture process all over again. The game of database management is nurturing relationships and nurturing people through this, what we would call the sales funnel. This is like a pipeline. And here's the thing you want to think about. It looks like this. In the very top of the funnel are people that have a broad awareness, but they don't have any interest yet. Those are the people that you're just cultivating over time in your 36 touch. They're aware of real estate. They're aware of you. They don't have any particular need. At some point, they have some interest. They become an opportunity. We're going to amp up our contacts a little bit more. And here's the thing that we're going to do. We're going to constantly, when we have people that show some interest, ask for commitments, micro commitments, to take the next step in the process with us. You've heard the phrase always be closing. I don't believe always be closing is the right approach in sales, because closing is a very specific thing that we do to ask for the commitment of an appointment. And the commitment of people's time is the hardest commitment to get, because their time is the most precious thing. They don't give it away easily. But if it's not time to meet yet, what would you be willing to commit to do to take another step to move a little bit closer to deciding? Would you be willing to read an article about staging a home? Would you be willing to, get an email from me every other week that shows you what's going on in your neighborhood, so you're keeping on top of the housing market? Whatever that next step is, you get to decide. But in the cultivation phase of the opportunities, you're going to kind of give people tasks to take another small step, another small step, another small step, and you're going to get people to move with you. The goal of your database is not just to be a big bucket, because a bucket is standing water, and standing water gets funky. It gets scummy. It gets skaters growing in it. Moving water, a river, a brook, a stream, water that's in motion is healthy. Things live in it. Things grow around the edges of it. Your database, when your database is in the pipeline, is moving, they're committing to take another step and another step and another step at a pace that makes sense for them. Now your database is thriving. It's alive. It's well. Your database is your business. The 4 rules: build it, feed it regularly every single day, communicate with it systematically, and service all the opportunities that come out of it. When you do this, and you just get into the rhythm of doing this every single day, your business is going to thrive. It is going to thrive. So that's probably where we're going to park this today. I'm looking at the clock here. It is 11:56. We got a minute or two before I have to jump off. Anybody have any ahas or any things that that they're taking out of this, that they're saying, this is the next step that I think I need to take? This is the place where, in these 4 steps of build it, feed it, communicate, service, this is the place where I need to learn how to do the next thing. Where are you guys today with this? What are you thinking?
I just like what you said already. I mean, it's showing me that to go outside of the box and like let people know that, to let them know that their friends know also. Because I didn't know that someone down the line might need me that I didn't know, as far as like a friend of a friend, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So.
And Eric, you think about all the different things that you've done, all the different, you've had lots of different jobs and lots of different communities that may or may not overlap. That gives you a really interesting opportunity to get into a lot of people's worlds, right?
Exactly.
So think about how you're going to leverage that, for sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If you have one that pops up a little bit later, I will be doing an office hour at 3. You can always jump back on that and ask your questions. But this is the database management piece, and learning how to do this, learning the tools of your craft while the business is growing, while the traffic is building up, is the time to build your highway system. Now is the time to really get your database set up properly, because once you get busy, you're not going to have time. And so learn how to do it and start working with it. You're not going to break it. Get whatever training and help you can from the tech people in your offices to kind of learn how to do it the right way. Whatever I can do to help you with that, lean on me as well. I'll be happy to help you.